Hello and welcome to this episode of the Kings of Garbage Time Football podcast, where we help you sort through the garbage that is mainstream football analysis to become a more knowledgeable football fan and a better fantasy football general manager. I am here with Colton. Colton, how are you doing tonight?
Good, especially since I won two fantasy games based off of this Monday night game.
Yes, we are recording this right after the Cowboys shellacked the Eagles on Monday Night Football. I escaped with one win yesterday when Aaron Jones came up short of about 23 points, I believe he needed. So I'm also in a decent mood. My other leagues, I did not fare as well. But that is neither here nor there. Me and Colton today are going to take a look back at some of the picks and predictions we made over the course of the podcast. I am personally a believer that 3 weeks into the NFL season is all you need to be able to tell basically how the season is going to go. Obviously not to a T. Some teams will be late surgers, but at this point, we basically have an idea of certain teams' identities, their trajectories, as well as players that have established themselves as key parts of the offense. So what do you say, Colton? Do you want to start with one of your bad ones, or do you want to start with one of my bad ones?
You know what? Let's point out your stuff first.
All right. I mean, there's nowhere else to go here other than my predictions for the Denver Broncos. I want to caveat this just because I don't like saying that I'm totally wrong. I want to caveat this with the fact that the teams that the Broncos have played are among the worst three teams in the league: the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Giants. Aside from their games against the Broncos, those teams are a combined 0-6. But they look a lot better than I thought they would with Teddy Bridgewater running the offense. I do want to give him some credit. He does look better than he did last year with the Carolina Panthers. Sam Darnold also looks better than Teddy Bridgewater did last year with the Carolina Panthers, so I'm not too torn up about it. But Teddy Bridgewater does look pretty good. I believe he's leading the league right now in expected points per attempt. I have to double check that, but I believe that's the stat. Again, not playing very good teams. The Jets and the Jaguars are obviously the dumps. I do think the Giants defense is still decent. So he does get credit for that win week one. They just lost KJ Hamler. Other than that, this wide receiver core is really nice, and Teddy Bridgewater is making the most of it. And so mea culpa. I am sorry, Teddy Bridgewater. I am happy that you are no longer on the Panthers, but I am also somewhat happy that you are bringing faith to another franchise when you could not do that with us. So congrats. And yeah, I own that one.
I will just say, I don't know if I'm gonna fully hate on you for thinking that they'd be bad this year because, like you said, I mean the three teams they just faced are pretty bad. Like we could be looking at literally the top three picks in the next draft from those three teams. But on the flip side, I think that they have looked pretty good under Bridgewater. Obviously, you mentioned the inferior competition. But I think that you might be a week too early on this because
That is possible.
They faced the Ravens this week, and that's like the first actual test. Just looking through the schedule here, I don't think their schedule is too hard, honestly, but the Ravens are
Other than their
definitely a team.
division. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
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 So we will
We'll
see
see.
how they do against the Ravens. But I did not expect them to be where they are at right now. And just the eye test, Teddy Bridgewater does look a lot better than I remember seeing him with the Panthers. With the Panthers, it was a lot of Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson, and DJ Moore sort of making the plays and Teddy just getting the ball there. I think Teddy looks like a lot better distributor now than he did last year. Let's go. Let's stay in the division. Let's go to one of yours. I made the case on the podcast for the Raiders as a playoff team. I was stupid enough not to lock them into my picks. Obviously, I would take the Patriots out right now if I could and put the Raiders in. But you are not sold on the Raiders. I believe when I asked you if I could convince you to give them the benefit of the doubt, you said no, not really. They're 3-0 now. They are, with the Rams, arguably the best team in the NFL. And I'm definitely going a little further there because I want to bait you a bit. But talk to me about the Raiders.
I mean, like my predictions weren't based off the talent of the team. It's always been about the coaching, and honestly, even with some of their wins, the coaching is still questionable. So like, I am not gonna like hate on myself too much. I like the Raiders. I like Derek Carr. I think he's a good QB. I think he's better than average. Elite at this point, no. But I mean, I think we talked about in the chat. If they get to playoffs, he has to be putting up elite numbers because, like, I think they faced some good opponents, mainly the Ravens. But I think did they beat the Ravens last year too? I
That
feel
is a
like
good question. I think they might have early in the season. Let me
I
check.
think they beat the Ravens last year. Not that it like takes away a lot, but like maybe they're just like playing teams like the Ravens really well. Ravens also do just play down to their opponent, but
It does not look like they played the Ravens last year.
I swear no. Okay, maybe I'm thinking. I think it was the Chiefs then because
They
they're
did beat the
the
Chiefs
same
early in the
division.
season.
Okay, that was a win. I thought it was the Ravens for some reason. Maybe it's because they just played. But yeah, so they can beat good teams. I don't know like if they'll just come out hot and fall apart then a season, maybe. Obviously I feel pretty good about them right now, and I feel kind of foolish for picking them to be bad, but I don't know. It's a little bit too early to call it, but I will say that like Raiders definitely do look a lot better, mainly the defense. I did not think the defense would look as good as they did, but then again, their defense and a lot of pieces on their offense have been hurt. I know Jonathan Abram and a lot of those guys have been pretty much hurt for their start of their career, and they look pretty good now that they're healthy. So there's a lot of factors there. I don't know. I just it's just hard for me to get behind a team that's poorly coached, but maybe Gruden can do something that no one expects him to and actually coach a good game. But we'll see.
Yeah, to your point, they kind of sat on their lead against the Dolphins and let them right back into the game. But this thing I was saying about the Raiders defense, if they could just be marginally better, it's a playoff team. I would say they've been a little more than marginally better. That pass rush actually looks pretty nice. And yeah,
Max Crosby.
I am definitely regretting having the Patriots in. Obviously, I made that pick thinking Cam Newton was going to be the starter. That did not go the way I anticipated, and the Patriots just don't look like a
Yeah,
playoff
looking
team.
at
Not even
Mac Jones,
close.
I mean, he should be this. He should have been the starter. I don't know what Bill was thinking there, but yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, so I would say it's safe to say that the Raiders would take my Patriots spot. I'm assuming that they would take the spot of a team that you put in the playoffs in the offseason, which is the Steelers, who have looked very bad early. This is the team that I was most interested to talk about today, not even just because you picked them, but just because the wheels have fallen off so
Hmm.
severely. Ben Roethlisberger looks completely washed. We were talking about it in the preseason that he might come out strong. Maybe he's feeling fresh before the injuries pile up. That lasted like a week. He looked awful against the Bengals. He's completely shot, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, this is kind of a reverse situation of what we've seen from the Steelers and Big Ben in the past, and it's kind of linked to Big Ben mainly. Is like you mentioned, they Big Ben and the Steelers always come out pretty hot. And then for some reason, now I think it's just age and past injuries coming up and finally taking their toll on him. I think that he's obviously falling off earlier, like way earlier than he should be. This like kind of fall off is expected from Big Ben, but it's really delayed usually until like, midway through the season or longer. So um yeah, not good. This I won't fault the defense too much because the Bengals, when they're firing on all cylinders on offense, is pretty close to elite. I mean, that O-line is just garbage, but like if like they're giving him time in the pocket, Joe Burrow with his weapons, especially with getting Chase, is gonna do a lot. And that's pretty hard for any defense to really, cover. Um, but yeah, it's just the offense, man. Najee getting 19 targets as a running back is just sickening, man. That is so, that is so bad. I think his receiving grade on the day was like a 56 or something. So it wasn't even like they were like empty targets. He got 100 yards, but if you get 14 receptions, like you're gonna get 100 yards. I mean, it's like it's I don't know. Yeah, but Big Ben is obviously the main concern, and he looks broken. So I would expect that Mason Rudolph probably starts at some point. Rudolph's not terrible, but he's not someone that I'd be confident in if I could go back and put the Steelers in playoffs. So that's kind of where I land on the issue, which is probably pretty in line with what you think. So
Yeah. I mean, TJ Watt being hurt obviously was a problem. They couldn't get after
yeah.
Burrow. Also, Alex Highsmith, their other pass
All their
rusher,
receivers too. Deontay Johnson,
right?
Juju, and Claypool at certain points of the game.
Right. So there's a fantasy component I want to hit with that. But thing I found interesting that we talked about in the chat for a bit is what did the Steelers do from here? Because obviously the rest of this team is a win now team. This is a young team, young weapons, great defense. I was of the mindset that they groom Mason Rudolph for the starting job. He's been there. He's still young. He's got the talent. Unless you can go out and get like a big free agent quarterback, and I don't think the Steelers have the cap space to be able to maneuver that. I just don't see what other option they have
I
because
have
going
one.
okay, go shoot.
No, this is some Madden bullshit, but honestly, like if I'm the Steelers, I go out and I trade the Rams for John Walford. Like John Walford on this offense. Oh my god, dude. Do you understand like the shit that they could do with John Walford on this offense? Like they could literally do run RPOs. They could do like between Walford and Najee, like keeping the ball. What is that called? Where like either the QB run option kind of
Read option, yeah.
read option where like kind of like how they do with Lamar Jackson, where like they'll fake a handoff and then Lamar decides like who to hand it off to, him or the running back. So something like that. Walford can throw. His arm's not the best, but it's better than Big Ben's at this point by far. Walford looked pretty good in his limited time with the Rams, and I think Rams might let him go pretty cheap. I mean, Bryce Perkins, our third QB, who Zachary loves, looked really good in preseason. So I don't know. Honestly, Rams might not do that because like Stafford obviously not injury prone, but he has been known to be injured at points. And we're obviously a competing team. So if he gets injured, we'd want Walford probably to start. Not feel as confident as a young player as Bryce Perkins without too much experience. But yeah, I would do that. But obviously it's not gonna happen because this isn't Madden, but it's like if I'm the GM, I mean, I'm making moves. Like, I don't know if I just rely on Rudolph there because they're, like you said, the rest of their team is competing. They got Juju, this year? He's gone. Not that he really matters too much, but
Yeah, and I'm thinking back to when the Jaguars traded Gardner Minshew for a sixth round pick to the Eagles. I'm trying to picture Gardner Minshew in this kind of offense. I
better
mean,
than Big Ben for
right.
sure.
So what do you think the fantasy component of this Steelers offense is? Now, I'm not invested in any Steelers in any of my leagues except for Pat Fryermuth in our main dynasty league. I don't see how I'm going to play Fryermuth at all this year with Ben playing the way he is. To me, I'm looking at it as maybe Najee's probably still a must start every week, especially if he's going to get all the checkdowns. I'm thinking maybe Juju, just because he does a lot of shorter routes. He gets a lot of the short work, and I don't think Ben's arm can really go much further. And then maybe Deontay Johnson, who appears to be the wide receiver one.
Mhm.
I find it hard to start Chase Claypool because
Yeah.
he is a deep threat guy, unless they
The ball ain't
manufacture
going
touches
deep.
for
Yeah.
him. Right. Obviously, Eric Ebron is a no-go. What do you make of the Steelers
You
offense for
kind of
fantasy?
landed a lot of it. I would say I would switch it up though. You're pretty much saying Juju was for sure. I would switch it to where Deontay is for sure, and then Juju is kind of like a wait and see kind of guy. Also Claypool too. He's talented. I can't discredit him too much. But you bring up valid arguments. I think the only like person from this offense I'd feel comfortable starting is Najee, and that's mainly in PPR because if he's getting 19 targets in a game, 14 receptions, it's like if Big Ben keeps like playing, he's gonna get double digit targets every week. And like that from a running back, plus the touchdown upside, plus the rushing upside, he's like the main workhorse, I think, in the league. I don't know anyone besides maybe McCaffrey when healthy that gets that much work in the passing game as well. Swift is getting there, but he obviously has Jamal Williams to kind of poach touchdowns and rushing yards. So uh, I think it's just like ride him till the wheels fall off. If you own him in fantasy, hopefully you don't own him in dynasty because I don't know how much trade he's gonna get. Plus, he's already 24. I mean, I don't like him in dynasty. I made that clear. I think that he's gonna be a trade option for people in like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, which is pretty crazy to hear coming from a rookie RB because really he should be in his prime, but he's actually kind of entering this zone of like you should probably trade him. But I'm getting off track here because of my Najee hate. But yeah, Johnson for sure has to start. He always gets open. Juju and Claypool, wait and see. Big Ben, obviously not. And then Najee, definitely.
All right. And just to revisit one more of our preseason picks things, I want to go to your NFC picks. I'm going to read them out. I think they're really good. I
Mhm,
think there's maybe one you might want to reconsider, but it's close,
mhm,
so we'll see. You had the Cowboys, the Packers, the Bucks, and the Rams winning their division. I think those are pretty much on point. I want to
mhm.
announce formally on the podcast that I'm done with the New York Giants. They are dead to me. If you can't beat the Atlanta Falcons, you cannot go to the playoffs. Yeah, good riddance to the Giants. So I got that one wrong, but I also had the Packers, the Bucks, and the Rams. Your wild cards were the Niners, the Seahawks, and then the one that I feel down on the most, that I'm wondering what you feel, is the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
So I think we're in on those divisional teams still. Walk me through your wild cards here, and if you're still seeing the same thing.
I feel pretty good about um obviously the Seahawks and the Niners. Seahawks maybe a little bit less so now. Also Niners less so. Maybe it's just because I hate them because I'm a Rams fan. But I mean the whole West looks pretty good if I'm being honest. So I don't mind those. But yeah, the Saints. I mean, maybe maybe I was thinking that the offense would be more consistent. Um, they did look pretty good against the Bears, but Bears obviously that O line is yikes. So the defense bailing them out a bit.
Wait,
Jameis,
which team are you talking about? The
the
Saints?
Saints, right? They played the Bears.
They did not play the Bears. No.
Wait, wait, what? Who
The
does the Saints
uh,
play?
the Browns played the Bears. The Saints have played the Packers, the Panthers, and the Patriots.
I I don't know how I got that confused. Okay. Yes. No, the Saints, honestly, the Saints do not look too enticing anymore. Especially now that I know they didn't play the Bears and get a win. Um, but no, yeah, I mean, I don't really like Jameis starting. I think I kind of made this evident on the podcast last time we kind of spoke about it, but I honestly was in favor of Taysom getting the run here because I think Taysom is just a better game controller, obviously. he won't win you games, but he won't lose you games. And the Saints defense obviously good enough to win games sometimes. So I think really they should pivot to Taysom. But if to answer the question, no, I don't feel comfortable with them as my wild card anymore.
So what would you think goes there? I mean, the obvious choice is the Cardinals,
I was gonna,
who I did pick as I had them finishing as the 5 seed, as the first wild card. So a little pat on the back for me. Another one would be the Vikings, who looked good against the Cardinals,
they did. And
lost a
Kirk
close
Cousins
game,
looks good.
looked good against the Bengals, who I will say now the Bengals are a lot better than I thought they would be. So the Vikings are 1-2, but they are competitive 1-2 against really good teams. I also had the Vikings in the playoffs in my preseason picks, but a little patting on the back for me as well. Speaking of Jameis, I wanted to go to some of our other picks, our sleeper picks for this year. Let's go yours first. You obviously hit on Dalton Schultz, who had a big night tonight and who was basically free. Brian Edwards was another hit for you. Your only miss was Gus Edwards, which is kind of like he got hurt. Nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Right. I had Darius Slayton, who has looked fine. He's been getting a lot of volume up until he got hurt in the last game
as well.
I still feel good about that one, considering there were fantasy websites saying you shouldn't even have him on your roster.
Yeah, I can't fault you on that.
Right. Tariq Cohen, who obviously went on the PUP list shortly after and has not played yet this year and will not play until week 7 at the earliest. And then Adam Troutman. And I think that's the one that's the most devastating to me. Obviously, I invested a year in Adam Troutman in our Dynasty League. I drafted him in the 3rd round of our rookie draft. And this Jameis-led Saints offense just looks awful. I mean, I think a lot of people were overrating it based on the performance against the Packers, where he piled up all those touchdowns with short fields. He finished with like 200-something yards passing, but like multiple touchdown passes, and everyone kind of thought this was going to be the thing. The Saints offense just looks dull.
It does. I think obviously, well, no surprise here, but I think they're definitely missing Michael Thomas. These guys that they're trotting out are just insignificant, really. I mean, their wide receiver corps is bad, like pretty bad. Like they have no one. Like actually, no one.
I think we also sort of forget, like everyone sort of saw Marquez Callaway with the 2 deep touchdowns in the preseason. He's still Marquez Callaway. He hasn't established himself as a receiver. I think we kind of honestly wanted to get on the bandwagon.
He's like a wide receiver 3, right?
Right. And then behind him, it's Deontay Harris and Lil Jordan Humphrey. I mean, I just don't know where to go with the Saints offense. And Adam Troutman, who's on the field all the time, just can't get the targets to make anything happen. The Saints offense it's
weird because I honestly feel like if I went throughout the NFL right now and found like wide receiver 4s and 5s, I could build a better receiver corps than what the Saints are trotting out right now. It's just, I don't know. It's terrible. And I mean, yeah, Michael Thomas definitely needs to come back. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't want to get into it with Michael Thomas. I don't know what he's doing. But yeah, I mean, Kamara obviously looks okay, but I mean, if there's nothing around him, I don't know what he's expected to do. Like, he's not the type of guy to just like lead an entire offense and like be a Barry Sanders-esque kind of back. Obviously, he's a very elite back, but he's not really built to do that. So,
right. So what the Saints have done the past few years is they've really limited Kamara's touches and maximized his effectiveness. So he's not getting a big workload and wearing down, which is what I hope the Panthers can do with Christian McCaffrey when he comes back. This year already, I got to pull up the stats here. He had 20 carries and 3 receptions in the first game against the Packers. Obviously, the Panthers defense shut the Saints offense down, and Kamara didn't really get to do much. But then against the Patriots, he had 24 carries and 3 receptions. So in those 2 games, he had 23 touches and 27 touches. And it just sort of feels like they're turning him into a bell cow when he hasn't been that his whole career. Because they have to, because he has to carry the Saints offense because they don't have anything else.
And then you also see like his kind of efficiency fall.
Yes.
Kamara is a pretty much like throughout his career, I think his average is like 5 yards a carry, like throughout his career. And this year, averaging 3.4. And yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, Alvin Kamara should be deployed better, but it's like they don't really have anything else to do. So Sean Payton's kind of going through being like, this is the only guy I feel comfortable getting the ball in this offense. So
I
I
have it
hope the
pulled up.
defense carries, but yeah.
I have it pulled up right here. Let me do the math real quick. Okay, so Alvin Kamara last year had 187 carries. This year, through 3 games, he already has 52. He's over a quarter of the way there through 3 games. It's not
The
the
longer
same.
season.
It's a longer season, and he just hasn't had that kind of workload in the NFL or in college because he wasn't the main back at Tennessee when he was in college. I
Mhm.
don't know if Alvin Kamara is going to be able to hold up all year if he's having to literally carry this Saints offense every
And
week.
he's prone to injury. Like I'm not saying he's injury prone. There's a difference between prone to injury and injury prone with how I'm using the word. But he is prone to getting injured. Ankle problems, a lot of stuff that he's had, and it's mostly due to him not really being built to do this. He's not, and I mean, I love Kamara, and obviously you love Kamara. You traded for him,
Right.
but like how the offense is going right now is just I don't know.
It doesn't bode
I
well for
honestly
him.
it doesn't.
And they just lost
Does not,
Teron Armstead, their starting left tackle.
which is a huge huge
Right.
loss.
As a Panthers fan,
Yeah,
I'm okay with it.
Panthers and the wild card, bro.
This was
So
always the thing with Jameis Winston. I was not too worried about a Saints offense led by Jameis Winston, but I figured that would be because he's throwing for 400 yards and turning the ball over 4 or 5 times.
mhm.
Now he's not really even doing that. It's just an
It's
ugly
just bad.
offense, right? But
Yeah,
yes,
I don't know.
my Carolina Panthers, who I did make the case on the pod, somewhat with my heart, but somewhat with my head, have done well so far for me. Obviously, not a murderer's row of a schedule, but I think a lot of people kind of downplay the Saints win a little too much just because they were missing some defensive starters, which obviously matters. But a lot of people were making a big deal about the assistant coaches that were missing. I don't know how many assistant coaches are going to stop Jameis Winston from throwing boneheaded interceptions when he's under pressure. But what do I know? I'm just a guy on the internet.
Yeah, that win was pretty significant, honestly. Like Saints before the season were probably projected to kill the Panthers in that game.
And it is funny because a lot of people did predict the Saints to beat the Panthers in that game, and now it's no big deal as they're missing
Yep.
so many people. But whatever, we don't have to talk about that.
It's easy for them to revert to Jameis's garbage and then move on. But
Right.
like definitely there's some more at play than that, I think.
Right. So I want to talk about our positional drafts here while we're going back through some of the things we may have missed. You and I think, had a pretty good running backs draft.
Mm-hmm.
You took Kamara, Elliott, Chubb, and then in the 5th round, you got David Montgomery. I took Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, and Joe Mixon in that order. But we both have a miss on the board right now, or a relative miss. You took Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 4th round. He's currently RB 32, but it feels so much worse than that. It just feels like he does not add an element to this Chiefs offense that they should be getting from the running back position, like we saw with guys like Damian Williams before, or obviously Jamal Charles. And then I took Myles Gaskin in the 5th round. He's RB 28, which isn't that bad compared to where I drafted him. I believe I drafted him, 19th. But obviously he's a letdown. Why don't you start with Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yeah, I just want to preface this by saying, like, we were talking about this before the podcast started. I was like, why didn't I just take DeAndre Swift there? And I've been thinking about that actually. And like I love Swift. I think Swift is insanely more talented than CH. But honestly, I think it was out of fear a little bit. It was more because I thought that CH would be safer. But realistically, the Chiefs don't need a running back. or at least they don't need a running back to be a workhorse. Like how the Lions are kind of relying on Swift and Williams. But there's another factor there to where he doesn't look all that special. Not like how he was hyped to be. I mean, when this guy was drafted in the first round by the Chiefs, like he was instantly promoted to the RB1 of maybe even fantasy or close to it. Obviously, CMC and Barkley kind of, but like he was definitely promoted into like the top 5 fantasy RBs, at least in Dynasty. And yeah, people are paying like multiple firsts in Dynasty for this guy. um, I try to give out Tyreek Hill and like a first or something. So there's a lot of crazy stuff around him. So obviously there's a lot of hype for him. So him being like kind of mediocre makes it look worse in hindsight. Um, but again, like he just isn't getting receptions, which I thought he would. He isn't getting the touchdown upside because Chiefs are also a little bit struggling themselves. But even then, like we saw last year, he wasn't really needed. They don't like they run a West Coast offense, and if he's not getting passes, which people thought he would because he's such a good pass catcher, then it's kind of like minute anyways. Um, I will say he looked good this past game. Like he actually looked pretty good. So I don't know if that changes things going forward, but I would assume Chiefs get back to their regular old stuff of passing and not passing to him for some reason. Um, yeah, maybe I'm just more mad at the Chiefs than I am at CH.
Someone, I was watching NFL Network today, and they were saying, could you imagine if it was Travis Etienne this past draft that fell to the Chiefs with his kind of explosiveness? That would obviously be a lot more similar to what we saw with Chiefs running backs in the past. I've been thinking about that all day now because I
Well,
do wonder about these things.
I was just gonna say, like, that discussion's interesting because people have the same discussion, but they throw in any of the other 4 backs besides him in the 2020 class. And I mean, it's kind of true. Like Jonathan Taylor, obviously huge. DeAndre Swift, huge. DeAndre Swift is a better version of CH in every way. So like him thrown in there would just be insane. Cam Akers, who people kind of forget about after the unfortunate ACL tear or Achilles tear, would also be way better than CH. Dobbins, preferably, would be better. I mean, it's hard to say with him. He had great efficiency, but he didn't really have like the season like Taylor or DeAndre Swift did last year. And then Cam Akers, obviously in the playoffs, looked really like kind of proved himself. But I would honestly want Dobbins over CH at this point too. Obviously Dobbins pre ACL, but yeah, I mean any of those backs plus ETN would look way better than I think CH has looked. And that's not to say CH is bad. It's just like if you're given the choice, you're picking him in the first round. So you're kind of saying that he's better than every back in this class. And like you're sus you're susceptible to getting that criticism then.
Yep. And then as for my Miles Gaskin pick, it's a little bittersweet because he's been better than his detractors thought he would be. Um, the hype for Malcolm Brown after the first preseason game, I watched that game and I just did not understand where that was coming from. Malcolm Brown is just not that good. He is a good pass blocker, which he has had a bigger role this last week in. But other than that, with the football in his hands, Miles Gaskin is better in every way. Um, and Miles Gaskin's stats haven't been that bad. 12 points in week 1, 8 points in week 2, 10 points in week 3. He's currently RB26 in PPR, but there's just no touchdowns. And I think the big thing right now is his yards per reception has basically been cut in half. I guess the fear that Jalen Waddle would take a lot of the short work from Miles Gaskin in the passing game has come to pass. But other than that, Gaskin, he upped his yards per carry so far through 3 games by a full yard. He looks fine. It's just as a fantasy player, I put a little too much stock into him, perhaps overcorrecting for the people that thought he was going to be easily replaceable and not much of a factor this past year.
Yep.
But he looks like a good NFL running back at least. So I can't be too torn up about it, I guess.
Hmm. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Mike Davis, like not their styles, but like how they're currently being used and how the team's kind of going about this and the situation around them. Obviously in a little bit different ways, but yeah, I mean, I don't understand why Malcolm Brown is getting rushing opportunities and getting rushing touchdowns, but I never understood it on the Rams either. So it's kind of like I'm kind of used to this, honestly. He's not bad. He's mediocre at everything though. So like I think you use him to pass block if you want. Maybe he gets like harder runs because you obviously don't want to risk Gaskin getting injured. So maybe he gets like the 4th and 1 or like, you know, 3rd and 2 or something like that. But like, yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously I'm not the biggest Gaskin fan, but that was more because I don't believe in his longevity, just because based off of like draft capital and such. But I thought this year he'd be a surefire RB2 at least. He's kind of, I guess, falling out of that. He's like a high end RB3 right now, but yeah, I don't know. And I don't know if it'll get better, but I'd assume like Dolphins are eventually going to realize that Gaskin should be getting this work. But that's more of like a logical assumption, and Dolphins aren't really logical. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean the Dolphins coaching decisions to me on offense are questionable at best. The play that the Raiders got a safety on, where they basically ran a wide receiver screen with Jalen Waddle in the end zone, but with no blockers, so Casey Hayward can run up and make the easy tackle, and the Raiders changed the momentum of the game. I don't know if I've ever seen a worse call from the end zone ever. I mean, I just don't understand what the Dolphins are trying to do on offense at any point during the season.
Yeah. And I like Flores too as a coach, but
Yeah, but he is a defensive coach,
he
so
is he's defensive minded. That's true.
all
So I
right.
don't know.
So let's hit our undervalued players. We're gonna ignore the fact that I said Drew Lock was undervalued. I just want to point out that at the time that I said that, he was free in dynasty leagues. Um, so I'm gonna wash my hands of that. But you had a very good undervalued pick. You had two rookies, Kadarius Toney and Dynamic Brown, who obviously were still waiting. Obviously, rookies sometimes take a little bit longer to get going.
That's fair.
But your third wide receiver was Zach Pascal of the Indianapolis Colts. Zach Pascal has started hot to the season. I got to pull up his stats from this past week
Fell off a
because
little last game, but that was more because of
he
the
fell off, but he
situation.
had 7 targets. That was actually the most targets he's had through 3 weeks.
Mhm.
So obviously Zach Pascal is doing something right, and you hit on that pick.
Yeah, he was a wide receiver like 130 or something. Like, and remember, I went through like the players around him, and like a lot of those guys are cut now, I think. So like, yeah, he's winning just because of cuts. But no, he's looked good, and he's kind of. I mean, obviously, a lot of stuff has went my way with the pick. For him to be in the situation with T.Y. Hilton being a non-factor with injury, and a lot of Paris Campbell. I don't know if he's injured or just not playing. Um, but yeah, there's been a lot of stuff after that that kind of has helped Pascal and his situation. But yeah, he's looked decent, and I think him and like Pittman are playing like more than 90% of the snaps. So he's on the field basically every play, and Wentz looks okay. Like he doesn't look bad, and I think he looked a lot better before the injury. So we'll see like as the season progresses if he looks better, which I think he should. So if that happens, I like Pascal, and I actually like Pittman too, honestly. But yeah,
Yeah. And let's go to one of mine. Obviously, I got very scared after week one, looking back at my undervalued picks. Dan Arnold, who was basically free in most dynasty leagues, has been okay. Obviously, now he's going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I do wonder if
should be
Trevor
up.
if Trevor will use him as a safety blanket. I think that might be a big thing to help him, but I don't know how much that translates to fantasy football.
I think O'Shaughnessy's gotten some touchdowns,
O'Shaughnessy,
so
yeah, and he's on IR now.
that should go to Arnold now.
Yeah, hopefully. Obviously, I had Drew Lock, who was benched before the season started. And then I had Zach Moss. And I felt the best about Zach Moss of my undervalued picks. And then they made him inactive week 1, healthy scratch against the Steelers. Since then, he came back. He put up 15.4 points against the Dolphins, mostly off the 2 rushing touchdowns. But then this past week against Washington, he had 13 carries for 60 yards, and he also had 3 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown, 18.1 points. And his snap counts went up. He played 28% of snaps against the Dolphins. That doubled to 56% against Washington. It looks like Zach Moss is about to become the main back in the Buffalo Bills split backfield. And even though it is primarily a passing offense, it does look like they're starting to use Zach Moss. So,
I will say, oh, go ahead.
I mean, did I strike fool's gold here? Is he going to regress back to what we expect from the Buffalo Bills running backs, or is he more than a flash in the pan?
I think that he probably is going to be a hit for you. And I actually invested in Zach Moss in our Superflex league, and I paid a second in James White, and I'm rebuilding. So I don't know if I made the good decision there. I mean, the second seems pretty like heavy now for Zach Moss in a Superflex. But if he keeps putting up weeks like this of double-digit points, I'm going to feel pretty good about it, because I think I could probably flip him or just keep him because he's still young. I will say, like, Zach Moss, this is kind of like his rookie year because he was hurt basically all of last year. So it's not really like he got much run and was just bad. He was suffering from injuries all rookie year. So I think that he's like this is like prove it year. And I think outside of obviously the healthy scratch where I think he probably broke a team rule, he's looked good every time he's played, right? So I will say too that Devin Singletary outside of this past week has looked really good too. 6 yards per carry in both the previous games, especially against Miami 2 weeks ago at this point. He was 13 for 82 and TD. So I think that Singletary also looks good. So I like kind of what they're doing here. But yeah, I'm really excited for Zach Moss. I hope he continues to have a good season because I liked him kind of going into the draft as well. And I thought that, and a lot of people thought that he could just outright win the job against Singletary in his rookie year. So I think now he's kind of like proving that he can.
Yeah. And let me check if there's any other picks from any of the other people on the podcast. Credit to Joseph, I think, on Damian Harris on being undervalued. I think we were all kind of in agreement that if anyone in the Patriots backfield was going to be the guy, it was going to be Damian Harris.
Except
and
last game.
He basically has been the guy, except for last game. He has a problem with fumbles that he's going to have to get sorted out.
Pass blocking too, apparently. I've looked into it, and yeah, pass blocking was pretty bad for him last game, so he didn't get much play time. But yeah, I think going forward, he's definitely going to be like a low end RB2, so definitely undervalue.
Mm-hmm. I'm just scrolling through here. You picked Tyler Higbee in the 3rd round of our positional draft of tight ends. Obviously, that pick has been hitting so far. Let me pull up the league leaders among tight ends. Tyler Higbee comes in at number 11. I think that's actually spot on where you drafted him. And some of the other tight ends have been quite below where they were drafted, including Mike Gesicki, who you drafted, Kyle Pitts, who Hunter drafted, Hunter Henry, who drafted Hunter Henry here, Juan drafted. So a lot of these tight ends obviously have not been delivering. Robert Tonyan is down at tight end 23. He was drafted by Omar as tight end 10 in that draft. I mean, so Tyler Higbee has hit for sure.
He hasn't lost value. I will say that. Yeah, I like it. I like the passing. Dude, the passing attack from the Rams is legit. But yeah, I like him.
Joseph's sleeper picks He got Ruggs and Sermon, who I think Sermon looked a lot better this past week. If any
Ruggs looks
49ers
good.
fans are unhappy that Trey Lance is not starting, maybe you do blame Trey Sermon, because Trey Sermon saved Jimmy Garoppolo's life in that Packers game where Sean Gary was coming in like a train and Sermon basically sacrificed his shoulder to take him out. It was pretty impressive. I don't know why he was a healthy scratch. I don't understand why he was buried
Or
on the depth
Aiyuk.
chart, but he looks really good. Obviously, Aiyuk looked really good against the Packers. That is someone was going to put them on their fades. Was that you that was going to put them on the fades that you
Who?
changed?
Aiyuk?
Because I know Hunter
No.
put Deebo Samuel.
No.
Maybe it was Joseph then. Someone was going to put
No.
Aiyuk
Joseph
and then
loves
change their mind.
Aiyuk. Maybe.
I think you were going to put him and then you looked at where his ADP was and you decided it was fine.
No. I think you're confused because I believe I was gonna put Debo on undervalued, and then I saw that his ADP
yes,
was
that's
the
right.
same.
Right. And
Yeah.
then Hunter put Deebo in the fades. You're right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I think Hunter missed that one.
Oh yeah, I told him that.
And then Joseph with the Bears, Hunter with the Bears in the playoffs. Swing and a miss, I think.
We'll see.
Joseph with the Dolphins, which does not look much better at this point. Anything else that comes to mind that I am missing here?
I just want to say Barkley looked really good. This is kind of unrelated, but we brought him up last podcast about maybe being worried about him, and he looks good. So I'm really happy about that. But other than that, that's all I kind of wanted to mention on that front about worried players. Aiyuk also, who you just brought up, looked good. So, and Sermon. So really, a lot of the players we had questions about are looking good. But yeah, I mean, that's all I kind of wanted to point out there.
Yeah, and I'm blanking on what I was gonna say just now.
49ers.
Saquon. Saquon. I was going to say kind of looks like Saquon Barkley at maybe 80% speed or so, which is still a pretty good running back, all things considered. If that explosiveness comes back,
I keep going back to that 50-yard run.
Right.
That he had.
If that explosiveness comes back, the NFL will be a better place.
And Daniel Jones looks really good. So,
yeah, I mean, God help the New York Giants. I mean, I know I talked about disowning them earlier, but I want so hard for the New York Giants to succeed. I feel like they have most of what they need. I just don't understand. The Atlanta Falcons are not very good.
They invest in their O-line every year, though, and it's always trash. Always trash, man.
I mean, we posted.
They draft people and they bring in big names and they just get there. I don't know if it's their coach, their O-line coach, or whatever, but it's so trash, man. So garbage. And Jason Garrett sucks.
Right. Well. I posted in the chat the video clip of the false start, where the focus was obviously on, I believe it was Deron Payne or someone being knocked over by an offensive lineman while celebrating the false start. But on the other side of the line, Chase Young just completely flew right past Nate Solder. Nate Solder didn't even know Chase Young was on the field.
That would have been bad.
Daniel Jones' season might have been over at that point.
Yeah, that would have been a monster hit.
I want the Giants to do well, and they're in the division to do it. Obviously, we just saw the Eagles get dismantled by the Cowboys. Washington's defense does not actually look very good this year, even against the Giants. I mean, it would have been them versus the Cowboys in a 2-horse race, and they are just not there.
I will say that I like the Giants just because I hate the Cowboys and I like Barkley. And I kind of like Daniel Jones now, but I don't like how their fans cried last year about not making the playoffs with the losing record just because the Eagles benched Hurts. So that was so cringe, man. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. And one more thing before we go. I would be remiss if I was not a Homer Panthers fan. I'll let you have a chance to be a Homer Rams fan right after this. But Homer Panthers fan, Dan Arnold was traded to the Jaguars. I am somewhat sad about this because I really like Dan Arnold. Um, I obviously had high hopes for him as a fantasy tight end compared to his ADP, but also he's just a tough dude who was very upset during the preseason because for whatever reason during drills with the Ravens and other teams, he was always getting cracked. I really like Dan Arnold. I wish him well in Jacksonville, but him being traded opens the way for Tommy Tremble, the rookie tight end, to get a bigger role in this offense. He flashed that against the Texans in Thursday Night Football, and Matt Rule called him the Jeremy Chin of the offense. I mean, the potential is there for Tommy Tremble to actually break out a lot sooner than I think anyone anticipated.
Your guys RB1 while McCaffrey's out.
That's right. Took the end around rushing touchdown. Beautiful play design.
Imagine just him running every play, dude. Just knocking over like 10 people. You guys should do it. Why not?
And I'll let you close as the Homer Rams fan. Obviously, I was in on the Rams. I picked them to win the Super Bowl. They're 3-0 now. They just beat the Buccaneers in Los Angeles pretty convincingly, I would say. It was not exactly a nail biter. Go ahead, hype them up.
I don't want to. I believe in the jinx. You don't believe in the jinx, but so I don't want to get too cocky or egotistical. I just want to say that I'm happy because Stafford looks as good as advertised, and I would never admit it to anyone in the chat or anyone, but I was nervous, like actually nervous because Stafford's not bad. I considered him at one point, like a few years ago, as elite, right? So I obviously believed in him, but he had high expectations. Like that, the expectation on Stafford was like insane. And like obviously Lions are to blame, and we know that now, but a little bit could be on the QB choking in big games, right? A little bit could be on that. And Stafford is a gunslinger, so he's prone to making mistakes. And if you make mistakes, the one defense that's going to punish you for that should be the Bucks. You can look at the Chiefs last year. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm really happy. The offense looks really awesome. No Henderson. Michelle looked good in his stead. And Cooper Kupp, who's my favorite receiver for the Rams, looks really good. Really, really, really good. Like no one can cover him good. Which I think is a little surprising to me. I mean, I always hyped him up because I love Kupp. But like honestly, it's getting scary to the point where like he's open every play. Like legit, like 3 yards of separation every play. And not that the Bucks are like some like great defense in the secondary. Obviously they have injuries, so credit to Simon there for the injuries. I mean, yeah, it's just kind of tough. But yeah, I mean, it's not even really that I'm like shitting on the Bucks at all. They're a great team. I was nervous the whole game. You can't count Brady out. And honestly, just to close it off, I'm happy where the Rams are at. And yeah, I'm excited.
I feel like people really undersold the Rams after the playoffs last year. They beat the Seahawks, and then they go to Green Bay, and they actually give Green Bay a pretty competitive game while Jared Goff is
credit to Jared Goff for that.
Jared Goff is playing busted, and Aaron Donald is hurt. Mm-hmm. Those were probably the two most important players for that Rams team in that game, and they still gave the Packers a pretty good game. And now that Aaron Donald's healthy, and while Jared Goff, I do like Jared Goff, and he's playing pretty decently in Detroit. Obviously, Matthew Stafford is an upgrade over Jared Goff any day of the week.
Yeah.
They have Matthew Stafford and a healthy Aaron Donald now, and I think everyone's kind of seeing that the Rams really were pretty much this good all along. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, it was honestly like, I hate to be that guy, but it was honestly pretty much all Jared Goff when like the offense would struggle. And I hate it because like I defended Goff for a long time, but Rams always had like a negative and like big games going against legit teams at QB because Jared Goff would never win you the game. So now that we actually have Stafford and like it's like, okay, the QB is solid. He can win at any point. If he makes mistakes, he can correct them pretty easily on the next drive. Like I feel very happy like about what the Rams can do.
Yeah. And there was to close on Stafford, who I have always been really high on as quarterback. There was a narrative going around a few years ago. I remember it because Simon brought it into the group chat one day where Stafford at one point was 5-46 against teams with a winning record. And I would always look at that stat and wonder, yeah, but he's on the Detroit Lions. I never understood the impetus to blame Matthew Stafford for that.
Now we know.
If we're being honest, his run game now is as good as any run game he's had in his years.
And their run
in
game
Detroit.
hasn't even been like as
right.
You know.
And his starting running back didn't even play this year. So I mean,
dude, imagine him with Cam Akers. Wow.
I know.
But I mean, Henderson looks good, but still.
Yeah. And speaking of Henderson, now the Panthers have their own Henderson, CJ Henderson, who I forgot to mention was why they traded Dan Arnold. Oh, did I lose Colton here? Okay. I lost Colton here. So another great podcast episode in the books. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Simon will put the button somewhere right here above my face now. And then follow the podcast on Twitter at Kings of GT. A lot of season left to go. We will be revisiting our picks competition as well as our positional drafts later in the season. And probably talking about our own Dynasty League, where yours truly is now in the lead, 2-1. Colton's also 2-1 in that league. Yeah, so that's about it. And I will see Colton and hopefully the other guys next week. All right.